Ain't that a sight? My poor boat's a wreck. It looks like a bomb went off in it. Hey y'all, Big Tim here. Thanks for tuning into this episode of Old School and Bass with Big Tim. So as you've seen, the boat is a wreck. You know, like I said, it looks like a bomb went off in it. But truth be known, this is a normal occurrence, especially first part of the year. You know, I like to get everything out, get it all cleaned up, and I'm just getting it back in here, trying to get it a little organized for the tournament season. Got rods everywhere, tackle. I mean, we're all over the place here. But it's important. I want to get this boat set up for the first trip of the year, which could be coming up any day. You just never know. Today would have been an okay day, other than the fact that we had a bunch of storms last night. Some pretty serious rain and a lot of wind. I mean, it's windy right now. You can hear occasionally, the wind slapping some things around outside. So today wasn't such a great day. Temperature's decent. It's almost 50, and it's got me thinking about fishing. So here I am in the boat. It's 3 o'clock now, and the sun finally came out. So I decided to come out and get some of this stuff organized, because Saturday, the forecast looks okay. We might make a trip down to Cumberland. We'll see. But we're going to get some things together. We're going to tie up some baits, and we'll discuss about it while I'm doing it. Now, one of the things that a lot of people forget about this time of year is the old Carolina rig. I've always got one set up with a baby brush hog and a 3/4 to 1 ounce weight. A lot of times you can run, if you've got your graph on, a lot of times you'll run and see some fish schooled up somewhere on the bottom out in deep water offshore. And, some guys will drop shot on them. Other guys will throw a jig at them. And I like to throw a Carolina rig. But you can do any of it. You can drop shot them. You can throw a Carolina rig or a football jig. So always keep your eyes on your electronics first thing earlier in the year. You never know what you're liable to run into. One thing for sure, I'm not going to need this buzzbait. So we're going to be taking it off. I'll probably be switching this reel, because this reel has braid, and I'll put a different reel on. This one I have on a little, I don't want to call it an ultralight, but it's a light action casting rod that I use for my 1/4 ounce red eye shads, rattle traps. And I don't think I'm going to be using a 1/4 ounce this trip. So I'll probably leave this rod at home, but I'll take the reel and put on that rod. Now, we'll probably have that one set up for another jackhammer or something like that, because as you know, a jackhammer this time of year is top notch. And sometimes if they're really eating it, I might have 2 rods with a jackhammer. So that would be my backup jackhammer rod. We already talked about the jackhammer. I had some good friends of mine come in the store the other day and ask me if the jackhammer was really worth it. I'm here to tell you it is. I mean, if you're fishing a tournament and you want to do well in the tournament, spend the extra money for the jackhammer is a big deal, because it basically, one of the reasons it costs so much is because it's tungsten. The head is tungsten. It starts shimmying as soon as you engage the reel handle. I mean, it's pretty incredible. But there was a video on YouTube, and I don't know who had it, or I'd link it for you, but they did a comparison of a bunch of different chatterbait styles. Now, they didn't do the Thunder Cricket, because I don't think that was out yet. But they did a lot of the other ones, including the jackhammer. And one thing about it, the jackhammer was super, super loud. So, funny thing is, I've caught them on that jackhammer even when it's, flat calm outside. Most of the time when it's flat calm, you think you want something a little more subtle. But no, I've caught them on this jackhammer when it's super slick outside, and I've also caught them when it's fairly turbulent. So this is almost an all-weather, all time of year lure. Most of the time people think about it in the cold and around grass, but I've caught them in a lot of places on it. So jackhammer is really something to consider. And of course, you already know about my famous War Eagle spinnerbait. Depends on where I go, whether or not I'll use that trailer hook. If I'm down at Cumberland fishing around the sticks, I probably won't. If I'm out in open water, I'll definitely leave it on. I generally will throw a ½ ounce if I'm out on open rocks, maybe a 3/8, possibly a ½ ounce in the sticks and trees, but ½ ounce tends to get hung up a little bit more. But this is definitely a necessity early in the season. You just never know. Good War Eagle spinnerbait. These two rods right here will be crucial for early spring success, late winter success. They will each have jerkbaits on them. These are a 6 foot and 6'6", medium action, one with a high speed 13 reel, another one with a 6.6 to 1 reel. The high speed will have the shallow Megabass 110. This one would have the 110 plus 1 or 110 plus 2, depending on how deep the fish are. Jerkbaits are essential this time of year. I don't know which color I'll have on. I'm not going to tie anything on until I get down there. That way, I don't have to worry about them getting beat up in transportation either. So, chances are it'll be a Pro Blue. That's my favorite color. But if the water's muddy or dirtier, we'll say, we might go to a Sexy Shad or something like that. So it's a couple opportunities. Something we talked about were jerkbaits. I've got my jerkbait box here out. And you know I'm a fan of the Megabass 110. So if the water's clear, this Pro Blue will be my go-to. Now this is the 110 plus 1. Goes a little bit deeper, runs about 8 feet, somewhere in there. You'll notice I've moved my red treble to the center. That's something new I'm going to try this year. I normally put it up in the front, but I'm going to try it in the center and see if that helps improve my hookup ratio. Now if the water's dirty, this one here is called Allergy Bone. It's got some chartreuse on the bottom of it. I've got a couple different models that we can use for shallow water, and you can see they're all tangled up here. The water's not too awful bad. I'll go with this. That's the Megabass Sexy Shad. This is the Deadly Black. Really cool looking color. This will work good in dirty water. This is the one I'm excited to try. I've had this for a few years. I don't even know if I've ever tied it on. But I expect that it would be good in dirty water as well as maybe for smallmouth. That's the Table Rock Shad version. You know, it's chartreuse on the side and purple on top. This would be good in dirtier water. Real excited about that. I always forget about it in dirty water. I want to give that a whirl. So that'll be the jerkbait selection. Well, if you've watched any of my videos before, you kind of already have an idea about crankbaits selection. I'm going to choose a Spro RK Crawler. This one is Electric Carl. I like that orange belly on it. This will get the nod. And of course my old favorite, remember the 2 tournaments in 3 weeks? Fat-free shad. This is the Dance's Citrus Shad. This one happens to be the fingerling. I'm going to think maybe the fish might be shallow. If not, we might jump up in size. One other bait I'm definitely going to be throwing. I'm going to try this one. You know, they always talk about having a flat-sided bait this time of year, early in the spring. This is going to be the Spro Little John MD. This one's going to get the nod. We're going to give that a whirl. It's got a nice orange belly to it. We'll see how this works. That's going to be my crankbait selection, along with my red eye shad. My red eye shad, my sexy chrome, that'll also get the nod. Now, like I said, a lot of these baits I'm not going to tie on yet, Because let's face it, driving between here and Cumberland, you know, there's a lot of things going on, bouncing and everything else. I'm not going to worry about that. I'll wait till I get to the lake. Another thing you might want to have hooked up, a little swim bait. This is a 3.8 Kitech. Happens to be Sexy Shad on a 1/4-inch head. So this could come into play for both smallmouth and largemouth. Now, probably one of the biggest producers in the early spring, late winter, is the old chandelier, the Alabama rig. This one happens to be the Yum Flash Mob Junior. It's got the spinnerbait blades on it and everything else. With, I believe these are the Kitechs we talked about earlier, 3.8s. And I got a bigger one, 4.8 in the middle. A little different color. I'll probably dip some chartreuse on there. Now these are a workout. I don't like throwing them, you know, mainly, I guess you could say I'm lazy, but it just, I don't know, it just takes the skill out of a lot of things. But if you're going to fish a tournament this time of year, you have to have one on, because you're probably going to get beaten by one. You know, if there's 100 boats in the tournament, probably 75 of them, maybe 80, maybe more, are going to be throwing an umbrella rig. And it also depends on where you're at. If you watch there's what, 2 BFLs coming up shortly. If you watch the BFL results, probably the top 10 guys, at least 8 of them will be throwing an Alabama rig. Now at Dale Hollow, you have to be careful because Tennessee rules say that you're only allowed 3 hooks. So a couple of these would have to be faked out with dummies or have the hooks cut off. But in Kentucky, you're allowed 5 hooks. So you have to be careful. You have to know where you're at if you're on Dale Hollow. But this will be a big player. For me, it probably won't be a big player, but I will have one on the deck and I'll cast it occasionally when I feel like I have to. Now, when the Alabama rig first came out, you know, everybody was talking about throwing it on braid. I usually throw it on fluorocarbon. I feel like you're going to get more bites on it. I know a couple of friends of mine, including Joey, were down on a tournament on Douglas Lake, and a lot of the guys were throwing it on braid and others were throwing it on fluorocarbon. The guys that were throwing it on fluorocarbon were definitely getting more bites. Joey himself told me that he was throwing braid, and when he switched, things changed for him and he started getting more bites on it. So I throw it on 20 or 25 pound fluorocarbon. Other guys will throw it on mono. I'm not a fan of the mono because it just has way too much stretch, and you're not going to be able to shake it free or get much feel. The stretch can be a good thing when you get a fish on it, but as far as trying to get it unsnagged, because those things, let me tell you, they hang up like nobody's business. At Lake Cumberland, they're bad because of all the trees. At Dale Hollow, not so much. You know, you got some grass, you've got some laydowns occasionally, but not all that much. So it's better suited for some place like Dale. But if you get around Cumberland with some rocks and not a lot of wood, sure, it'll be fine. You know, a lot of times I throw it on my backup flipping stick, my Duckett 711 double extra heavy. This thing actually has a little tip to it. This is actually real good for the Alabama rig. It has enough tip to it that it doesn't wear me out quite as bad. And when I throw a little smaller, lighter one like that Umbrella with lighter heads on it, I'll put it on a medium heavy. It's actually my Whopper Popper rod. I'll put it on that rod, which is a, what is that, Abu Garcia. It's an Abu Garcia Vendetta, medium heavy, 7 foot. And it handles it well as long as you've got light heads on it. If you've got heavier heads, you know, if you've got 3/8 of an ounce heads or even a quarter, you know, let's face it, quarter, you got 4 of them on there, you're looking at a bunch of weight. So you have to use the appropriate rod for the rig that you're throwing with the weights on it. And that's all going to be dependent on how deep the fish are. So give that a whirl and see what happens there. And I don't have it tied on here just yet. But this is the meat stick. This is a rod that I've caught more fish on than all the other ones probably put together. This rod will have a brush hog on it. A baby brush hog. Probably be green pumpkin. Could be watermelon, but probably be green pumpkin. And probably not going to catch a whole bunch of fish on it. but you never know. There's been a lot of times early in the year that I get on a brush hog bite. More often than not, it's a spinner bait or rattle trap or crankbait or something along those lines, or even an Alabama rig, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. But always got to have my brush hog. And of course, I don't know anybody that would fish Lake Cumberland without a jig. Now, I'll probably end up changing the trailer on there, getting that's an ultra vibe speed crawl. It's probably got a little too much action on it. I'll probably just put a standard old, maybe a Beaver 420, maybe a Smalley Beaver, depending on the bite. But I want something a little bit more subtle than this. So it'll probably be a Beaver. This stuff would generally work anywhere in the state of Kentucky. Or even if you're out in Missouri and fishing around the Ozark Lakes, Truman, Lake of the Ozarks, all of that stuff. This all would probably work. Any highland reservoir. This would be good information. So give it a whirl. I think you'll catch a bunch of fish. And hopefully the weather holds and we can get out this weekend. So until then, we'll see you next time. And thanks for tuning in to Old School and Bass with Big Tim.